Hi everyone. For starting today's video, I'm assuming that you all had the chance to read the syllabus, the outline, and to watch the outline video I made before. You can find it on the Blackboard website on videos menu. Welcome to today's class. It's Introduction to Dynamic Web Content. In this class, we'll deeply discuss how the data flow between the clients and servers on the internet. We know that we can use our devices, laptops, small handsets like cell phones, smartwatch to surf the internet, to check our emails, to request information, to process some data, etc. We request this information or these services from servers. So the servers are those supercomputers, the one they serve our request, process our request, or provide us with some certain information. We'll start with the history of World Wide Web. WWW was created by the European Laboratory for Particle Physics, CERN. CERN, they created a network of machines, computers that connect with each other for CERN's scientists. Mid-90s, Tim Berners-Lee, who's a fellow there, was Dr. Fellow at the time, he created a method to navigate between WWW devices or computers. The method was known by Hypertext Transfer Protocol, HTTP. He also standardized the share document. So the document that's shared between those machines has to have some certain format. The format known as Hypertext Markup Language, which is HTML. So any document will transfer, and this network has to have that certain format or standard, which we call it HTML. HTML, earlier, just to tell you, I'm old enough to remember the earlier version of HTML. It was very dry. At the time, we felt like, computer can do better. We always watched those movies where the computer can do like magic, can do powerful things. But at the time, the internet, like even let's talk about the computer itself before the internet, was a bit slow. And when the internet came to the scene, I'm old enough to tell you guys that the earlier version of the internet, it had the very basic web pages, HTML pages, just like a plain page, some text here, some other images here and there, etc. It was very slow to load. We felt something missing, At the time, we were watching movies and we saw like computers where they can do like magic things, process like high performance processing, etc. Where at the time we were experiencing a very slow internet. However, internet started catching up later on, and nowadays we see that any web page can have a very dynamic content from different sources, from different servers, etc. For example, looking at Yahoo's web page, you can tell that we have information from different resources or from different servers. Like here, you can connect to Yahoo's email, you can check the news from Yahoo, sports, finance, etc. Maybe from Yahoo servers. This area, if you can tell, this area here, skip the dishes. I believe this area from Amazon, it's an ad from, I think, Google server. If you scroll down more, you see here's the weather. They're reading the local weather from some local weather broadcast server. So we can tell, like, we have these dynamic content that it's exchange the information dynamically. I think this data will refresh itself maybe after some certain times using Ajax. So Berners-Lee's basic model, we have HTTP, which is the protocol that governs the requests and responses between client servers. Server, actually, it has two jobs. The first job, it's always waiting for a request to be serviced. That's the first job, to wait for requests. The second job is to serve these requests. So the weather broadcast server, it provides us with the weather information that we need. So the second job is to serve us or serve the request from the client devices. It can handle multiple simultaneous connection. So the servers, it's Google, we're all connecting to Google maybe at some certain moment. It can listen for many or multiple income requests. When the server receives a certain request, it will acknowledge the request and send back the receipt just to tell the requester or the client that, hey, I received your request. Just wait till I process it. So the basic model that we have the client here and we have the server at this side. So you have maybe your laptop, your handset device, and you just type on the browser server.com. It means you're requesting that page. So what happens? The internet will look up for the IP address for that server and return it to you, to your device, to the machine. So now the machine here at 3, it knows the actual physical address. So what it does, it will send that request to the server using the IP, the physical address. Once the server receives the request, it will send back the acknowledgement that the request has been received, and it will queue it if it's busy with handling some other requests. Now, when the server it looks for your request, you say, oh, okay, the user here just typed server.com. It means the user needs the index.html page. So basically, the server just go to the hard disk or the storage system, file system, and fetch index.html and return it back to your device or to the client's device. That's basically the very basic model of client-server communication. I mentioned to you guys that when you request a service or a web page, maybe google.com, the internet will return to you the actual IP of google.com. That service known as domain name service. If I ask you in the exam what's domain name service, it's the service that it provides the clients with the actual or the physical address of the servers. Yeah, here this slide I'm talking about the benefits of the backend of PHP, MySQL. These two, they're backend or server-side programming languages, while JavaScript, CSS, HTML5, they are client-side programming languages. What does that mean? The client-side scripting, JavaScript, CSS, and HTML, what happened when you request some certain page from the internet, when it comes back as HTML5 that's combined with some other client-side programming languages, JavaScript for functionality. If you want to check, validate some certain thing here on the web page, that's been done by JavaScript. It can validate whether the password and retyping the password matching or not. That can be done by JavaScript. Or maybe if you leave some certain element empty, that can be validated by JavaScript as well. CSS is the styling, cascading style sheet, where it takes care of the appearance of the web page, the colors, the shape, etc. And HTML5, it's the current version of HTML, where it takes care of creating the actual document, standardize the content of the web page. The client-side environment used to run script is usually the browser. So if I ask you where we run the client side, using browser. So browser is the environment that runs the client side programming languages. Processes takes place here in the computer. So when I received google.com or yahoo.com, here I requested yahoo.com, I clicked enter, it goes to the server returns this web page. Now, this current web page actually it's the local version of Yahoo, the received version. So I received yahoo.com with HTML5, maybe some JavaScript, CSS, etc. You may check it yourself here if you go to the inspect. I like this inspect because it's the developer tools where you can check the website and like content. Maybe if you go at elements, you can remove elements, edit elements, etc. Delete elements here. You can just maybe expand it a little bit. Let me maybe just remove the header. The header, it contains the access to the CSS and JavaScript. Look, it's very basic now. So this version, I could update it or modify it because it's the local version and it runs here on the machine, on the browser, the client browser. When I click again yahoo.com, I'm requesting a new version of yahoo.com. So if you look now, I received a proper version. Now, talking about server-side scripting, which is known as Common Gateway Interface, CGI. In our case, or in our class, we have PHP and MySQL. They're both CGI or server-side scripting. What happens when we request some service from the server? In our case here, MyWeb. If we request some page, maybe something.php, MyWeb will take this page. Since it's .php, it will send the code to the to PHP interpreter. If the PHP code has an access to the database, will access the database, generate a new file, HTML file from the combination of PHP and MySQL, then return it back to the browser. So what you will be receiving is, of course, HTML that was processed on the server side. So how it was processed? If you request .php, the server will send your request to PHP interpreter, and if the PHP interpreters finds or I have any access to the my SQL server, will take that information from my SQL or MySQL, combine everything together as HTML and return it back to your client browser. Yes, PHP and Bear, just like example of scripting languages, etc. Just for an example here, in our class, we will have MyWeb as the server. By the way, MyWeb is the only acceptable platform to do your evaluation tasks, such as assignments, labs, and the final project. So you need to know how to use MyWeb, how to extract the links from MyWeb. The links, I mean, how the others see it, because some students, they just copy the link from MyWeb and send it to me. That's incorrect. You need to know how to extract the links, how the other they see your website. So we have scripting languages in this class, PHP, MySQL. They're both hosted on MyWeb. PHP and MySQL, they're very popular combination to create the backend of any website. It has a big share on the market. Why? Basically, both are first, they're open source, means they're free. They're very compatible with each other and also with Linux and Apache, the combination known as LAMP, L for Linux, A for Apache, M for MySQL or MySQL, and P for PHP. And they're very fast, very powerful, very convenient to use. And since MySQL has the word SQL, it means it's a standard or structural query language. Can have like those structured like tables, lists, etc. So with like you can create something for as a backend of the objects, like the entities, cars, persons, students. Using PHP, when you create a PHP file, it should have the .php extension. So the server encounters .php request. It will send it direct to the PHP interpreter. We used PHP tag to tell the server that here where you need to start processing, interpreting, compiling, interpreting, say, the PHP script. So it has to start with like tag, opening tag, question mark PHP. And nowadays, this tag is optional, the current version of PHP, but this one is essential to tell the server, oh, here I'm starting the PHP tag. If I need to continue with some other HTML code, then I have to close the PHP tag. If I'm at the end of the PHP file with no other HTML requests, so you may skip the closing tag. So this is only when you're mixing two different PHP tags or PHP tag, then you need to close it to have some other HTML programming thing code, say, yeah. Here an example, you may open the tag, or you have to open the tag, actually, this is a mandatory. And echo it prints, actually means like print on the browser. It's used actually to, usually we use echo to print things like strings or return values from function. Here the dot means concatenation. So I'm printing on the browser, today is, then dot is concatenated with the return value of date L. Talk about the date function later on the class. Then dot means concatenation, and here if I need the dot as a string, I need to put it on a string. So that will print today is with the dates. You may try it yourself. Create on the example folder. You create maybe example1.php, type this code, and then request that PHP file. I'll see the result. You may have like HTML, today is, and then you only need the date from PHP. You don't need to include this guy and PHP request. So in this case, you can say today is as HTML code or HTML, just a string, right? An HTML file. It still has to be .php, by the way. It's just like here, it's HTML is like today is, then PHP tag just to request the date. So here I'm just requesting the date. The server will send this request to the PHP interpreter and will get us the date. And then it will, since we close this tag, I can continue with another HTML string. Dot, maybe here is the late. Using MySQL, we use MySQL as a database to store our changes, store our transactions, store some information, maybe HR stores like the employee information, SIS system in university stores the students information, students records, classes, grades. You may think of any example of backend storage. Back in time, people used flat files as a backend. Maybe like, you know, they have your bank account in some file, let's say .doc file or .txt files. What happened? Those files, they're accessing files in the file system, they're asynchronous. It means once somebody is opening that file, it's locked for that person. So if you have a version, let's say a Word document, you open it, you try to change something, or you're changing something, and at the same time somebody else try to access that Word file. They can read it, of course, but they cannot change it because it's locked. So imagine if the bank account, the bank employee is opening your account file, and by mistake he or she forget it open. So now the other employee cannot access your file. That's why it came of the need of using a database where your data will be, your transaction will be logged for that transaction, and after that it has to be unlocked. And then we need like a robust database management system. In our class, we'll briefly discuss the MySQL, but it's not meant to be like, you know, a real database management class. However, we'll be discussing many concepts. MySQL, it's like English-like comments, so it's easy to use, and it's been used, as I told you before, it's free and it's been used for a long time now, and people love it. Just to visualize what happened now we added the PHP and MySQL component to our basic model. So let's say now you request on the browser something.php. So the internet, the DNS will tell you the IP address of that server. Now your browser can physically send the request to that server using the IP. Once the server receives your request, again it will acknowledge the service for you, and it just like wait till there is a place or the processor of the server can handle your request. Once the server starts processing, once it starts processing your request, it counters .php. Since it's .php, it will send it to the file system. Sorry, first the file system say, oh, it's .php. Since it's .php, or at least contains PHP tags, it will be sent to the PHP processor. PHP processor or interpreter will process your PHP. If the PHP code has a request to access MySQL database or any other database, it will send that request to MySQL, to the server, database server, execute the SQL request there, and then return the data. Now, the combination of PHP and MySQL will be combined together as an HTML file. This file will be returned to the client. Here, I just need to tell you that the HTML file that returns from server, it can contain JavaScript as well, can contain images, any objects can run by the browser. So if in the example I ask you, can like the return HTML page from a server, can or cannot have a JavaScript, the answer will be yes, it can contains or include JavaScript or some other object as well. The rest of the slides talking about roughly how to access MySQL with just one example. You may follow the example on your own. I believe in one of the assignments I'll be asking you guys to follow this example. For now, just to show you, because there is a variation between the slides and the current system. They just update my web server, so the graphical user interface is different a little bit, but I believe it's same concept. Yeah, where to find PHP with you guys? Here, account manager, MySQL management. Then it's similar to the slides. If it's the slides ask you to create a new database, you just hit this button, and then for like the admin, they specified that any user, it has to be with your uWin ID. In my case, my win ID is ALKHATE. This is anything before @uwazar.ca. Actually, this is my email without @uwazar.ca. So let me create DB. Going back to the slides, let me just go back, guys. Sorry, here. Go back to slides and see what's asked here to. Yeah, just DB. Please follow the instruction literally. It's easier for me and you guys to follow up later on. So it's the password, you may have it then. Database user. Usually we create the database and user with the similar ID. Now it's ALKHATE _DB. Once you create, it's already exists in my case, but your case will be different. Then the password, just type test 1 2 3. Be careful, no spaces. In your case, again, you need to have DB, then create the database. Continue the example here. It's just like a small example of like how to retrieve data. Here, this is for the old server, so ignore it, please. Here, the similar thing, how to create a table using the graphical user interface. You click on the database when you create it, and then structure, and here it has a create table. Create a table name with as users, the table name user actually, and for columns, and then we need to fill the information of the columns. First name, the type varchar, surname varchar. Don't worry about the types, we'll be discussing it in very detail later on. Here the length 30, 30, 100. Leave the default. Here timestamp, if you have a timestamp, then you may specify the current time. That means by default we'll take the current time and you don't need to worry about entering the create date. This is good for auditing. Usually we audit the transaction by a timestamp. Timestamp is the combination of date and time, even seconds, milliseconds, etc. Just to tell, oh, it's good for auditing in general. We'll talk about it later. And then hit save. Yeah, here you may insert into users, surname, first name, email. Again, I don't have to insert into the last column, which is create date, because by default we'll take the current time. So I didn't specify that column here, didn't specify created date, created time. Yeah, values, Smith, John, with email, you just match. Surname is Smith. First name has to be John, and then email is something.com or something@something.com. Hit go. Yeah, that's it for today. Yeah, if you just want to query what, like some record, say, okay, select surname, first name from users, where email equals this email, a specific email, the one we just inserted, right? Please try to enter also like a fake email or something that doesn't exist. Maybe add one at the end and see if it breaks it or not. Yeah, that's it for today. And you may read the chapter 1, I think, in the book. All the best, guys. We'll talk to you later.